Volume 1, Chapter 31. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 60, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, Kobold, LV9, Grey Wolf, LV1, X2, Abnormal Status. With the skill, I found out that there were over 10 goblins that have surpassed level 60, excluding the rare and the noble classes. Finally, I'm about to reap the fruit of putting in all that time of training the goblins. This is what you call a sense of high, I suppose, after doing a job well done. On top of that, there are also 20 goblins that have reached adulthood since the time I took control of the horde. The larvae this time around also didn't suffer from starvation because of all our food, so the goblins from this batch are bigger than the previous goblins. Their heights could be compared to that of a goblin rare. At the same time, their faces are also softer than the others. It's proof that they were raised in a good environment. Gi za, gi gu, gi go. I called the 3 who were close to evolving to go near the lake, and hunt around its vicinity. The vicinity around the lake is a good place to hunt because it's safe. Moreover, the enemies in the area are also just strong enough, neither too strong nor too weak. Giga, protect the village. I left the protection of the village to the only goblin noble we had. It's a precaution in case the orcs attack when I'm not there in the village. Gi, come with us. I took Gi, the beast warrior, along with us as well. And left to hunt along with 5 other goblins. We're headed for the east. The region where the kobold and the humans live. I want to have a system in place that will monitor one of the more crucial areas. In order to reach the Fortress of the Abyss, which is the home of the goblins, we need to first get rid of the orcs in the west. But while scouting the west is important, that doesn't mean we can just ignore the threat behind us either. The recent spars with Lily reminded me again of the fearsomeness of the human race. The humans are currently peerless under the heavens. There isn't a single race today that can hold a candle to them. And while the humans are currently amidst troubled times, there are people known as adventurers who still try to invade the forest. Even if that weren't the case, for the humans, monsters are preys, targets to be subjugated. So even if the monsters within the forest don't slip out into the land of the humans, there are still those who will try to go in and subjugate monsters. There's also no telling when an accomplished feudal lord who will try to invade the forest will appear. Adventurers could also be hired to go into the forest. Regardless, there are plenty of reasons why I can't ignore the humans at the east. They are a threat, and it is imperative that I either suppress them or monitor them. But as much as possible, I don't want to wage war with them until I have enough power to win against them. There are 2 enemies in front, warned Gi. My eyes narrowed. Chiefs, kobold, said one of the goblins as it let the dogs sniff my kobold to have it remember its smell. After that we let it run off to look for the kobold ahead. Pushing our way through the bushes, and through the dense forest, we came across a small den by a tree. You, cried my kobold as it wagged its tail. Can you call your friends? I asked, giving it food as I did. You, it answered. As the kobold howled toward the cave, I had the goblins scatter themselves, and had to stand guard to watch our surroundings. Suddenly 10 kobolds came out of the den. The 10 kobolds could be said to be quite adorable as they wagged their tails. Not that that's something that I should be making a fuss out of though. After I gave each one of those kobolds meat, I ordered them, saying, gather your friends. Do that and I'll give you more food. Friends, bring. Lots, foods, nodded the kobold, to which the other kobolds nodded as well, showing their approval. Go. At my signal, the kobolds went deep into the forest, looking for their friends. Looks like you're going to be quite busy now, Gi. After that, I called my subordinates, and left that area to go hunt. After hunting armored rabbits, triple bears, snakes, and all sorts, we went back to the den of the kobolds. When we got back there, over 30 kobolds were waiting for us. As I fed them, I quietly thought to myself, it's like taking care of a plague of rats. Eat, I said. But the kobolds only quietly watched over the food with their drools dripping down their mouth. It wasn't until a moment after I told them to eat, and my tamed kobold gave the signal that they began to wolf down the food before them. You, signaled my kobold. Then in an instant, all the food we had brought, suddenly disappeared into the stomachs of the kobolds. Then having had their meals, the kobolds suddenly started rubbing their head on my feet. At that, I gave them some simple commands: go find the orcs. Do that, and I'll give you more food. And the kobold replied, orc, find. The kobolds all simultaneously barked as they ran off to look for the orcs. Is that all right? Asked Gi, titling his head confused. It's fine, I curtly replied, sweeping away whatever questions Gi had. This is a good opportunity to see how far we can tame the kobolds, and how vast the scope of their observation skills are. Alright, this time let's go get food for ourselves. The goblins bowed at my command, and I led them to hunt a second time. Chief, called Gi, looking at me with prompting eyes. The kobolds are here. Apparently, the beast warriors can talk with the kobolds. After sending out the kobolds to search, and hunting our own food, we took a nap somewhere near the den of the kobolds. There, the tamed beasts of the beast warriors woke us up. Orcs, yelled the kobolds. Seeing the kobolds bouncing excitedly, I gripped Iron's second tightly. Gi, are you ready? Yes, replied Gi as he rode on the back of his double head. With his long axe, and his tamed beast as his mount, he was truly like a knight from a warring country, or a knight from the west. Let's go. At my words, we moved out. And the kobolds followed us from behind. Our destination, the area where the kobolds spotted the orcs. There, 2 orcs that were unaware of us loitered. Leading the horde, I was the first to crush one of the orcs with Iron second. The crushed orc fell to the ground as blood spurted into the air, and I ordered my subordinates, don't hold back. Kill the orc. Following my orders, Gi pounced with his double head, and swung his long axe against the orc. Pugu, cried the orc, shocked, as Gi's long axe came swinging at its head. A blunt sound echoed as the axe made contact with the orc's club. Then Gi turned around, and ran while the orc tried to chase after him. But that created an opening, and the other beast warriors spurred their tamed dogs to bite the orc, inflicting several wounds on its limbs. But as expected, the dogs alone proved incapable of defeating the orc. The wounds were shallow, having only peeled off the skin, and gouged out the meat at most. The dog's fangs weren't strong enough to reach the bones. Then in that case, go for the open wounds. As I ordered them that, I received the blow of the orc's club with Iron second. Then as I kept the orc suppressed, I let Gi's subordinate beast warriors widen the already open wounds on the orc. Pyugiu. This stupid muscle brute. I stopped the orc's movements with all of my strength, but the attacks aimed at its wound couldn't inflict any fatal damage. Then suddenly, the kobolds barked, and they suddenly joined the fray. Unexpected, I thought. The kobolds used their dagger, and went for the orc's legs. Ha! Don't fall behind the kobolds. I yelled. The kobolds cut the orc's toenails and toes. Then afterwards, the kobolds jumped back to take some distance, and then they repeated the same attacks again, piling up small damages against the orc. I couldn't help but wryly smile at the sight of the kobolds jumping around the orc. Guru, bellowed the orc. The orc bellowed, but it only added oil to the fire as the kobolds were roused even more. And they lacerated the orc even fiercer than before. Even the goblins themselves joined the kobolds, and started cutting at the orc. Gi then brandished his long axe, and struck it against the orc's back. The rest of the kobolds and goblins aimed at the open wound made by GGI, and they pierced their blades into it. Pyug 3. The orc cried at the pain, but its arm was unable to budge under the lock of my sword. You're not going anywhere. My great sword and its club was at a stalemate, keeping the orc from moving. But in order to make sure it didn't run, I pushed my sword even further until his club was hitting his chest. I'm not going to let this orc attack the goblins directly. Time passed with the orc showered in lacerations, and eventually, the goblins and the kobolds managed to successfully defeat the orc. I'll distribute the orc's meat to all of you. Eat yourselves full, I said. The meat of the orc was then fed to the kobolds that were wagging their tails in excitement and the tamed beasts of Gigi and his men as prize. At that moment, I suddenly heard a groan, causing me to look down to my feet. There, I saw the kobold subordinated to me, shaking, biting its neck as if trying to pull it. And then... Yoen. The kobold howled in pain, and its body shone brightly. This is. In the next moment, the kobold had grown a size bigger, and its fur had gotten longer. Both its fangs and its claws were also sharper than before. Its face had also changed, and was now closer to a wolf than a stray dog. Still doubting my eyes, I used the skill, race, kobold, level, 1, class, high, pack chief, possessed skills, divine protection, none, attributes, none, master, goblin duke. I tilted my head. It evolved into a high kobold, but it seems this evolution or class promotion stuff differs depending on the race of the monster. Goblins become rare class, while kobolds become high class. What's the difference? I tilted my head, pondering that question, but in the end it's something I didn't understand, so I just decided to leave it. Strike an opponent with a speed faster than the eye can see. Only effective for the first strike. Call for help. Not limited only to your own pack. Also works on other packs or friends. I don't think there's any need to see what fast eater means. Are you the leader of your pack? I asked the kobold as I sat beside it. Woof. I should give this one a name too. A dog. How about, Jesus? I asked the kobold, rubbing its head as I did. Woof. I threw it a slab of orc meat at its reply, and in a short amount of time, it reached the bones. Fast eating, huh? What a waste of a skill. Jesus, from now on I'm going to be leaving the west area to you. Let me know whenever orcs or humans come, alright. Humans, orc, let you know. You give meat? Asked the kobold. Yeah, as much as you want, I replied. Jesus became playful at that bold response. Gigi, I'll leave him to you when I'm not around. Yes. I won't put the chief's guidance to waste. Gigi's definitely smarter than the other goblins. He also seems to have understood my method of teaching the goblins how to beat the orcs, by not killing the orc outright. Jesus, rely on Gigi when I'm not around, okay? Then slowly, Jesus neared Gigi, and Gigi silently gave him meat. Jesus quickly ate that meat, and then it played by Gigi's feet. So much for fidelity. In any case, with this I've seen how good the kobolds are at surveillance. What's next is to train the goblins, and muster enough of a force to fight against the orcs. There's still a lot to do. Subordinate beast, kobold has evolved. Kobold will become high kobold. The effect the kobold has on his pack will increase. Author's note. I haven't properly explained it before, so let me give some extra rules regarding the differences between the high kobold and the goblin rare. That the protagonist uses shows the status of his target. But what it shows is actually the social ranking of his target. Meaning, what it shows is the achieved social rank of the target within its race, as well as its role. In terms of importance for their respective races, it goes like this. Rare, divine protection, goddess of the underworld, Altesia, attributes, darkness, death, subordinate beasts, high kobold, LV1, Grey Wolf, LV1, X2, abnormal status. I rested at the village after dealing with the surveillance issue of the East. And now, I'm watching the different factions fight desperately with Lily. Whose faction is fighting today? I asked. Ours, my chief, answered G.I. Go as he bowed. I don't know if it's because of all his scars, but G.I. Go always reminds me of the ancient warriors. Have you found a way to defeat the humans yet? Not yet, he replied. G.I. Go, I have a plan I'd like you to teach to the 3 goblins that are coming out today. My face twisted into a grin in my mischievousness as I uttered that sentence. To anyone else, my face must have looked vicious. Lily, are you ready? Yes, there are no problems. Lily stood there as always, swinging her wooden sword, and cutting the air. Then, let's begin. And so, the battle between Lily and the 3 goblins began. Lily approached the 3 goblins slowly, but the 3 goblins approached her as a group. The basics of the 3-man cell hasn't changed. One goblin will block, another will break the foe's stance, and another will kill the prey. Only this time, the 3 goblins grouped up, and they blocked Lily's attack. Lily wasn't called an adventurer just for show though, and she threw a flurry of attacks, leaving no gap for the goblins to take advantage of. Any attempt to move away would quickly be met with a flash of her sword, forcing the goblins to be restrained in one place. But those light and flexible attacks were by no means capable of killing in one swing, so the goblins gradually grasped the movement of the swings until finally, they caught it. Got it, I remarked. Lily swinging her sword to her heart's content was the very thing that gave the goblins the keys to victory. Reflexively, I yelled, "Go!" But to my surprise, a goblin was blown away instead. And the other 2 goblins scattered to opposite directions. TCH, a goblin went down on all fours, and tried to take Lily from below. The sword was originally a weapon meant to grasp victory while standing. It doesn't have much techniques for fighting opponents grazing by the ground. All the more so with a surprise attack like this one. Having been perfectly executed, Lily shouldn't be able to counterattack. Lily struck with her sword, and it hit against the ground. At the same time, the goblins from her left and right went for her legs. Something like this. TCH. Lily tried to jump back, but the goblin that was on all fours got to her legs first. Before Lily knew it, a goblin was by her legs, keeping her legs from moving with a wooden sword. The match was over. That's enough. I can still fight, fiercely argued Lily. Then how about another round? I suggested. Of course, she promptly replied. Then in that case, next one up is, my faction. The one who stepped up was G.I. Goo, a goblin who was born in this village. Alright, bring the goblins over then. I'll tell them the plan. I gathered the goblins who were to fight Lily, and quietly, I whispered to them the strategy. When I finished discussing, the goblins went to face Lily. I won't lose again, declared Lily. Lily grit her teeth, and she swung her sword. Begin. At my signal, Lily plunged forward toward the goblins. But the goblins all went down on fours, and went for Lily's legs. No matter how many times you do that. Lily jumped back and fixed her stance. But the goblins continued to crawl. TCH, the 3 continued to attack from below, leaving Lily unable to do anything but defend. Her legs were also injured from before. Were she to move her body forcefully, her injuries would only get worse. Taxed with the burden of having to fight as she endured the pain on her legs, her fatigue piled on top of one another several times faster than normal. The attacks grew fiercer, and when her body finally reached its limits, her sword was knocked away. Heaving, and with her sword gone, the match was over. That's enough. TCH, I shook Lily's shoulders, then I left her in Reshia's care. Afterwards, I called G.I. Goo and G.I. Go. Why do you think they won against Lily? The two goblins remained silent, so I answered the question. The reason is simple. It's because there was a clear plan to follow on how to engage the enemy. Clear plan. Is it too hard? In other words, I told them where to attack. I see, nodded the two as they answered at the same time. Moreover, I also told them the opponent's weakness. Pressure the opponent's weakness, and with the weak point identified, the three goblins will be able to attack in coordination. And naturally, victory will come. In other words, it essentially comes down to make the most out of the three goblins' number advantage. And attack the opponent's weakness. From here on out, I'll be expecting you and the others to put this into practice. We can't win with power alone against the orcs. That's why I have to train their ability to see through their enemies' weaknesses. With enough experience, even without the skill, they should be able to do it. Understood? As you will. I nodded back to the two goblins, and then I went to check Lily's condition, who has already been brought back to the jail. How are your wounds? I asked as I entered the jail. It's fine. There are no problems, replied Lily. It must be because of Reshia's healing that she's already able to stand. We'll end here today. Are you still planning to continue tomorrow? Oh, of course. As Lily stared daggers at me, the corners of my mouth twisted. Since you're that lively, I guess you'll be fine. Obviously. I'm not going to let those goblins get ahead of me any more than this. I'll be looking forward to it then. I left the jail with a mischievous smile plastered on my face. I think I really need to do the hunts with Gi Za's faction as the center. The fact that they were the first to overcome Lily is really something. So I'll form the groups like this. One druid at the center and two melee goblins. Right, I'll have them hunt with this formation. But just in case, I'll have to make sure to order Gi Za not to kill the two goblins that will be in front. I don't really mind, he said. But then right after, Gi Za gave a rather delicate response toward my orders. Why do you want to keep those goblins alive so much, he asked. Why? Let me ask you in return, Gi Za. How much of this world do you think we can conquer? Another abrupt question. That wry smile, and that shrugging shoulder of his really stinks of human. You know. I plan to conquer everything of this world. Emotion like fire welled up from within the deepest pits of my body as I uttered those words. Everything, huh? That's right. This forest of darkness. The land that the humans dwell on. Or the mountains that the dragons rule over. Or even the labyrinths that are under the giant's dominion. Everything. Gi Za, speechless. I faced toward him, and I declared, which is exactly why I can't have these goblins dying here. If they are to welcome me as king, and if I am to be the king you wished for, then I must guide them. The place where they shall die, the place where they shall fight, I will dictate. And that place is not here. For them to lose their lives in something as meaningless as these hunts. I absolutely forbid it. Coo. Gi Za held his tummy as if it were the strangest thing he's heard. Then stopping himself, he looked at me seriously, and said. I'm looking forward to it, my king. You've made me want to follow you. In response to his resolve, I puffed out my chest. Of course, look forward to it. The skill will be added to Gi Za. Volume 1, Chapter 33. Influx. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 60, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, High Kobold, LV1, Grey Wolf, LV1, X2, Abnormal Status. It was the High Kobold, Jesus, who informed me of the humans' presence. The humans are here, he said. Cold sweat drizzled down my back. Their numbers. I asked as I threw food at Jesus. I waited for him to chew it before he finally replied. 15, he said. TCH, that's a lot. Are we a match for them right now if all those 15 are adventurers? It might be possible if we could just strike them at their weak point. But either way it's a huge gamble. Alright, let's go. I have to prepare myself for the worst. It's been around a month and a half since Reshia's group was captured by us. I don't know whether 15 is actually a lot or not, but the goblins I've been preparing to fight with the orcs have mostly learned the 3-man cell. There's no telling whether that will be effective against the humans, but if we retreat, there's no telling how far they're going to chase us either. We can't retreat. There's no other path for us but to fight. Giga, gather everyone. As you command. When all the goblins that were rare class and above were gathered, I gave my orders. Go, protect those that can't fight. Yes, Chief. Everyone else, gather your men. We're going to intercept the humans. Yes, Chief. 3 were visibly fired up, while Giza quietly burned, ready to fight. I made 5 3-man cell groups, totaling to 15 goblins. Then I left the remaining goblins under Go to protect the village. I gripped iron second. Then I petted the grey wolf pups playing by my feet, and handed them to Reshia. Quite a large group you have here, remarked Reshia. It's because I don't want to fight needlessly. Take care of these guys until I come back. Reshia took the grey wolf pups that were playing around, and embraced them in her arms. Don't worry, I don't mind taking care of Gunei and Cynthia. What's with the names? Are they not to your liking? Gunei means Vanguard God, and Cynthia, the Lady of the Lake Shore. Those names are no good. Especially Gunei. That one definitely needs to be changed. It doesn't seem like you have the time to argue though. Let's talk about it when you come back, suggested Reshia. Of course, I don't like the names. Don't you think it's pitiful to name this pup a Vanguard God? It's a good name though in my opinion. Right, Gunei. The 2 grey wolf pups wagged their tails as they followed Reshia. Is that all right? I hope you two realize that you've just been named something absurd. We'll be waiting, said Reshia. For a moment, I was speechless when I heard those words. She's encouraging me. Don't worry, I plan to minimize the casualties on the human side. Right now, my enemy are the orcs, and not the humans. Right. It's not time to fight the humans yet. Yet, that is. I don't know how Reshia took my words, but she nodded. Lily, do you want to come? To fight with humans, she asked. Her eyebrows lifted up. I thought to have you ask for their surrender, I replied. All right, replied Lily. Ms. Lily, asked Reshia. Lily calmly shook her head. Lady Reshia, please wait here. I will keep the casualties to a minimum. This will be a good opportunity to find out if she's scheming anything. Cleaning up all the problems here in one swoop is a swell idea if I've ever heard of one. Right, I should put out a bait. A chance to kill me. That should bring out whatever Lily's scheming. Hurry up and prepare, I said. Then I left the jail. We sprinted away from the village into the forest with the druid, Giza, the beast warrior, Gi, the former leader of the village, Gigu, the only noble class, Giga, and Lily. Jesus led the way, bringing us through a path that was so narrow it could be called an animal trail. It wasn't until half a day had passed that we finally spotted the humans. Along the way we met some double heads and triple horns, but we ignored them, and we continued on our way. There was no need to hunt them as the smoked and dried meat that were prepared by Mattis was enough to stave off our hunger. We ran like this for several hours. And just as what one would expect from adventurers, Lily kept up with us despite her heavy breathing. After a while, Jesus stopped. We reached our destination. I ordered Gi and Gi Gu, who were the first to arrive, to search the surroundings. Then I ordered them to go first. Afterwards, I gave orders to Giga and Giza. Giga, go with Lily. Giza, cover our backs. More units came later, and I gave them their orders too. Then Giga's squad returned. Humans, ahead, he reported. They're near. Good, let's continue like this. Don't make any noise. Giga's squad followed closely behind me while keeping low. A little later, I heard some noise from ahead of us. Some sort of fight. What happened to Giga's unit? I asked. According to Giga, they're already positioning themselves behind the humans. All right. We saw the humans right after that. The humans were fighting with an orc. The center of the forest where there are little trees are, after all, the orc's turf. I thought it was rather reckless of the orc to face 15 all by itself, but unexpectedly, the orc's the one winning. Well, that's not really surprising as the humans were visibly tired, but why? Didn't they come here to rescue Reshia? Aren't they adventurers? I can see a woman feeding her babe, a man carrying a heavy bag, screaming. They had at most only 2 men to fight off the orc. Lily, come here for a bit, I called. Lily came out of the bushes to take a look. What are they? I frankly asked. Lily knitted her brows. They're most likely refugees. Oh. There are refugees in this world too. People whose homes were burned, and were driven off into the forests, you mean? Lily reluctantly nodded. I guess she doesn't want to accept it. I might be able to use this. I wonder if I should kill them, I quietly whispered to myself. Let's lead Lily around, and make her show her true colors. Lily gazed at me, dumbfounded. Didn't you promise Lady Reshia not to cause unnecessary casualties? She asked, her voice, tinged with anger. It's better to have less mouths to feed, I snapped back. Then I began to compress the encirclement we had laid out. Gi, go to the left. Surround the humans. Giza, to the right. The goblins nodded without saying a word. Even then, Then are you going to save them? Lily looked furious. I don't mind sparing them, but you'll have to be the one to persuade them. And naturally, you'll also have to look after them yourself. If you're fine with that, then fine. I'll spare them. The humans were gradually being driven into a corner by the orc. I got it. They won't do anything to trouble you. Good. There's not much time though, so hurry. This area is too close to the human region. GURUUAAA. As my mouth twisted into a grin, I stood up and activated the skill. Giga, kill the orc. I ordered Giga, who was still next to me, to kill the orc. Accompanied by his subordinates, Giga quickly bolted out into the fray, and pierced the orc. As a pained scream rose, the orc was mangled by Giga's subordinates. I left the bushes as the orc continued to scream, and I made my appearance before the humans. I wonder what the humans thought of Lily, a human, following me. The 2 warriors that were fighting the orc a while ago turned pale as they wielded their swords again. What is that? Isn't that a high-class goblin behind you? One of them asked. Lily was visibly perplexed, not knowing where to begin explaining. I silently cursed the humans' incessant vilifications. But I am the one who made her do this. Still, I don't like these humans, but if they're useful, then I'll use them. I'll use them until their lives are torn and ragged. I don't wish for all of you to die, Lily said. The humans and the warriors glanced alternately between me and Lily. The non-combatants at the back froze. So please, shut up, and obey, she continued. But the humans were not pleased. You think we'll do something like that? One of them yelled. You call yourself human while being tricked by goblins, yelled another. Lily couldn't stand up to the humans' abuse. So I decided to help her out a bit. Oi, Lily. You don't have much time left. TCH, Lily's impatience grew, and I called out the goblins in the surrounding thickets. Show yourselves, I said. The goblins who were hiding by the thickets all this time, all stood up at the same time. And they shrieked at the humans. What is with this number? I can hear the screams of the warriors. I did my best to calmly observe them. Especially, the warriors. How much can I use these humans? Are they worth the risk? TCH, there should still be time. Please, don't lay a finger on them, said Lily. The humans should know now that Lily's just barely hanging on to me. I smiled at that thought. What will it be, humans? I asked. Then wielding iron second on my shoulder, I continued, obedience. Or death? I asked. 10 seconds is all I'm giving them. So I decided to put on another show. And I took a step forward in front of Lily, standing right before the humans. Which will it be? I asked. Is it death you wish? And Lily began to beg as she pointed her sword at me, saying, please stop. Please. She knows she can't win, yet she still dares to point her sword at me. It's clear as day that she's afraid. Even the tip of her sword is shaking. All the while, the humans were at a complete loss, not even able to come up with an answer. You wish to fight me? I asked Lily. I won't be sparing you this time. Around this time, Giga, who had just defeated the orc, wielded his blood-stained spear. But I signaled him with a raise of my hand to stop. Now, Lily. Show me your true nature. If you think you can defeat me, then come. I will take you on whenever you please. But Lily begged again. I beg you, please. Lily struck her sword into the ground, and she fell down on her knees. That last act of hers doused whatever will the humans had in them to fight. Very well. Bring all of these to the village. If anyone tries to rebel, I will kill him. I swung the great sword on my shoulder. That swing was only to threaten, but the sharp wind pressure that came from that swing was enough to rouse fear in their hearts. Lily, you'll be responsible for guiding these humans. Understood. I understand, she replied as she sheathed her sword with her face down, keeping me from seeing her expression. Giga, watch over these humans, and make sure they don't run. As you command. Giga, go feed meat to the kobolds. Yes. For everyone else, hunt as you go back to the village. When I finished giving orders, I went back to the village. The refugees are as follows. Adventurers. 2 farmers, male. 6 women. 4 children. 3. Volume 1, Chapter 34. Chains. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 60, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, High Kobold, LV1, Grey Wolf, LV1, X2, Abnormal Status. The basics of treating a prisoner is to bind them without killing them. When I got back to the village with the humans, the goblins welcomed us in high spirits. Lily, I called. I ordered her to deal with the humans dwelling themselves. Make your own things, I said. You want us to make our own house, she asked. Exactly. We don't have enough buildings to house these many humans. There's no choice but to make new ones. It will take some time to build new houses. What should we during that time? Lily's fatigued state tugged at my mischievous heart. You can throw them at my house. The women can go to the jail. The men can be halved. 1/2 to Chino's and Mattis jail. The other half to my house. I'll let you decide who goes where. Is that clear? I didn't say anything out loud, but I made it clear to let her know not to let a revolt happen. I understand. I'll choose carefully. Good. With this I've chained her feet. The chain that is the life of humans. She risked her own life to save theirs. That's why their lives can be used as chains to bind her. As the two gray wolf pups running towards me entered my vision, I saw Reshia. A wry smile that could be said to be the very picture of unhappiness appeared on my face. Here are the spoils for the day. Make you sure you distribute it fairly, I said. The sun had already set by the time we came back with the double head and the triple horn, so we started a great fire, and gathered around it like one would in a banquet. Why did you accept the humans? My subordinates surrounded the fire and ate the double head with me. The one who asked me that question was the leader of the Druids, Giza. Because I still have use for them, I replied as I chewed the meat. Giza remained silent for a while, brooding to himself. Then he opened his mouth, and he said, I don't understand. The kobolds are one thing, but do you plan to take the humans in as well? It'd be great if I could. Their knowledge is not something a fool could come up with after all. That's great and all, replied Giza. But the others aren't happy, you know. Half of the 15 humans are children and women. The remaining 7 are all fully grown men. 2 are able to fight, but the rest are farmers that don't even have any swords. Because they can't touch the women in front of them. I asked. At Giza's nod, I turned toward him a gaze that could kill. If anyone tries to disobey my order, I will respond in kind and punish them appropriately. Don't make such a scary face, complained Giza. I was just inquiring. What are you planning to do? It won't be easy to put the goblins' dissatisfaction to rest. Women, huh? Come to think of it, I forgot to ask. What? My face right now might be smiling, but my heart is actually in a whirlpool of emotions. I still haven't forgotten that sensation. The sensation when my blade was at the woman's neck. I can still feel it in my hands. Do you want female humans that much? I asked. Well, yeah, Giza hesitantly replied. I stuffed my cheeks with meat as I enjoyed myself with Giza's troubled expression. Embracing the female of another species is like a drug to goblins. A pleasure so poisonous that it can drive them insane. The only reason they haven't been taken over by that mania yet is because of the skills and that I possess. According to Giza, that desire to obtain the female of another species is like a spasm in the ferocity of its fervor. How troubling, I wryly smiled. And Giza knitted his brows. This horde is abnormal, he said as he shrugged his shoulders and smiled. This is a horde of warriors under the king's command. I hope you could just nod and agree, I jokingly replied. I should let you know. I'm not having an easy time either, replied Giza as he left. He has a point though. It's certainly not good for the goblins to pile up their dissatisfaction. So what to do? It's easy enough to allocate female humans. But while it isn't a problem now, what about later? Something like that will become a hindrance later on when I annex the humans to my rule. I'll have to find a different outlet for the goblins' desire. Alternatively, I could also just keep their desires tied down. A different outlet, huh? Do I desperately train them to deal with it? Or is there another method? Like thoroughly telling them that there's no time for sexual desires. The next day, I prepared a new form of training for everyone else who weren't hunting. I had a fifth of the horde do the following drills alternately. The method of swinging a sword, the method of thrusting with the spear, throwing practice, and a drill to strengthen coordination. The opponent of the goblins was mostly me. We couldn't rely on Reshia's healing as she had her hands full with the humans after all. I made the goblins swing heavy wooden swords. I made the goblins aim for their foes' feet. And I made the goblins slash with their long wooden rods as they matched the timing of their surroundings. Moreover, in order to practice the throwing skills of those under GIGA, I had them throw wooden rods at their targets repetitively. Anyone who slowed down even for a bit were met with a strike from GIGO's and GIGO's wooden rods. Then I trained the 3-man cell groups that were already in tatters. I have no intentions of holding back. There's no point in training unless we go at it with the intention to kill. I struck down the incoming goblins. I kicked them. And I dragged them, and made them stand again. As for the goblins that ran, I grabbed them by the scruff of their neck, threw them and trampled on them. I dealt with 20 goblins in one day. As expected, having to deal with what is approximately 7 groups by myself took a lot out of me. But it was a small price to pay if it meant getting rid of the goblins' dissatisfaction. It also wasn't just all pain that I brought to the goblins. I made sure to prepare some rewards for those that did well as well. I let them lay with the female goblins and eat good meat. I later heard from Gi-za on the 5th day, that this day was known as a day of fear amongst the warrior goblins. It's true that fear was a huge part of my training, but there's also no doubt that the result was good. After all, I was able to instill the fear of me into the goblins while training them. Then after I finished beating up the goblins to the point that they could no longer walk, I went out to hunt. It's been 10 days since I began the training, and the goblins have mostly gotten used to it. By the 2nd day, less goblins ran away. And majority of them were able to oppose me. The training progressed faster than I expected. When I went to take a look at the dwelling place of the humans, I saw that they did a good job. They made a good jail. There are some amongst the men that have experience making houses. I might be able to use them. Lily also ordered them to fix the fences surrounding the settlement. I later asked Lily, and as expected, their home was burned because of war, and they were all refugees. And although they ran to the forest, they eventually got lost. A fence, you say? Asked Lily. Right. I was thinking of giving this settlement to you. I'm dangling bait in front of the humans I brought here 10 days ago. It's been 10 days since we started living alongside each other, and although they're still a little stiff, they've at least acknowledged the fact that I have no intention of hurting them. True, they're still afraid. But at least we're now able to converse. My words caused the humans to look at each other. What do you mean? Nervously asked an elderly man. Humans that can build buildings such as these are definitely useful, I thought. We will soon depart this village and head west. I just thought I'd give this settlement to you humans when we do. An even bigger commotion than before arose. It's easier to repair a settlement than to make a new one after all. Of course, if you want, I could also leave you with a few goblins to protect your people. This area is a target for enemies from outside the Forest of Darkness. Chino's efforts in cultivating also seems to have paid off, I continued. I had Chino's cultivate the land near the village. It's somewhat taken shape now. Potatoes should be ready for harvest by next year. Yes, the soil here isn't bad, nodded Chino's. To which I nodded back, satisfied. The humans became noisy again. But this time, there were voices of happiness mixed amongst the commotion. Of course, I have a reason for telling all these things to the humans here. I'm not doing this purely out of goodwill, of course. One reason is to properly put the carrot and the whip into practice. Another reason is because the larvae are growing up, and the goblin adults are increasing more and more. It takes approximately 20 days for a larva to grow up into an adult goblin. But the female goblins can give birth without pause. Well, not completely without rest, but that's only 5 days at most. After that, they'll become pregnant with another goblin. As of now, there are 20 female goblins. And all of them are pregnant. Because of the 3-man cells and the abundance of food, and on top of that, the results of the training, barely any goblins have been dying recently. Moreover, the larvae are all mostly guaranteed to become adults. At this rate, the horde will become too big to fit into this settlement, so we have to find a new home. Alternatively, I could also find different homes to assign the goblins to. There's also the option of expanding this settlement. But I have to decide what course to take. I could separate the horde, but then comes the problem of deciding who to entrust their leadership to. If they're too far from me, their loyalty might become a problem. I'll need someone who can deal with that. Ji-za could do it, but he refused it himself, so the plan's no good. As for expanding the settlement, if the settlement catches too much attention, the humans might become fearful of us. There is a settlement of humans not too far from here after all. It wouldn't be strange if they attacked. As for the third option, we'll all eventually have to go to the Fortress of the Abyss, but for now there's the issue of the orcs in the west, blocking our way. With all that, I have no choice but to compromise. The land here is best for hunting prey. The area surrounding the lake in the northeast doesn't have any strong beasts. The only danger here is the threat from the west. And deep in the west lies the origin of the goblins. Eventually, we too will settle there. So since this settlement has served its original purpose, what other purpose does it have left? Once I take over the fortress, I hope to use this settlement here as a foothold toward the world of humans. Whether this plan goes well or not is another story, however. But regardless, I don't want to throw this settlement away. So at the very least, I'll have to leave the minimum power required to maintain it. If I can use the humans well, I'll be able to expand the area I control. Without using the goblins, that is. There's still time left. Think it over. As I left my proposal to the humans, I turned my back and thought of the predicted outcome to myself. Speaking of which, I forgot to mention this, but when I came back, I had Reshia change the name of the Grey Wolf pups. The Vanguard of God is just too much. At most, she could name it You Are You. It's only a wolf after all. After a long and fierce debate, we settled on Cynthia, the Lady of the Lake Shore, and Gastra, Sovereign of the Wind's Howls. The last one came from Ji-za and the old goblin. I don't know why, but for some reason they too got dragged into the debate. The two Grey Wolf pups were making themselves comfortable on top of my knees as I debated with Reshia, so I took the opportunity and used on them. Race, Grey Wolf, Gastra, Level, 1, Class, Pup, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, None, Attribute, None, Race, Grey Wolf, Cynthia, Level, 1, Class, Pup, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, None, Attribute, None. That charge skill is a troubling one. These pups might still be small, but there's no doubt that they inherited the blood of those giant wolves. Level has risen. 60 equals 61. Volume 1, Chapter 35. Omen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 61, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, High Kobold, LV1, Grey Wolf, LV1, X2, Abnormal Status. Lily came to inform me of the humans' response to my proposal. Their answer: a yes. The humans will work to improve this village under the condition that this village will be handed over to them in the future. And since they'll be living in this village in the future as well, I doubt they'd cut corners in the village's renovation. With the monitoring of the east and the renovation of the village settled. Moreover, with the plans to eventually develop the village into a fortress in place, I've finally reached a point where I can start planning for the west. Regarding that, there are only two things I know. 1. The goblins' home, the Fortress of the Abyss, lie in the west. And 2. We need to pass through the region controlled by the orcs. I should send some scouts first. Following that train of thought, I had a scouting party formed with Gi-gu, who is from this village, and Gi-gi, the beast warrior, as the core. Incidentally, I decided to go myself as well. Gi-gu will be heading northwest. Gi-gi, southwest. And I'll be heading directly west. We'll each be scouting for half the day in our respective areas. I also ordered them to retreat immediately in case they happen to meet an orc. But of course, I'll be killing the orcs without question if I ever meet one along the way. Unfortunately, that's still impossible for Gi-Gu and Gi-Gi. I had each of them take 5 goblins. And when night came, we set out. I'll be going with 3 goblins myself, but I'm not having them take the goblins along just for scouting. The other reason is that I want to increase the goblin rares in the army. So 5 goblins each, since there are 10 goblins whose levels are over 60 from the interview. We'll study the ecosystem of the area as we go. Our goal in this mission is to find a place nearer to the Fortress of the Abyss that we can use as a base. It's a 10-day distance from the village. That's not something to make light of. There might be other threats aside from the orc raids as well. That's why I want to find a place that we can use as a base. A village held by the orcs, or perhaps a fortress. If possible, I'd like to find a place that has excellent defenses and plenty of stocks. If that's not possible, then at least a place where we can sleep at. The orcs tend to dwell in areas that have plenty of open space. It's an orc trait. So I should be able to find orc settlements in those kind of areas. We diligently continued onwards as we cut down the sparse trees and vegetation. Along the way, we came across giant hornworms that had horns growing out of them. And I found out that it was called arrow caterpillar. We hunted them as we went along. The only thing we needed to pay attention to were the horns growing from their head along their back. Aside from that, they were nothing special. We cut off their abdomen and tasted their meat. It had a heavy taste, but was surprisingly popular even amongst the goblins. We might be able to use these as provisions in our expedition. Incidentally, we also came across some giant ants along the way. Unfortunately we couldn't eat them. Then there were those giant, double-neck lizards known as lizard double. These ones we could eat. Lastly, we came across some giant snails with thorns growing out of their shells known as pickle snap. We couldn't eat them either. I'm well aware that the monsters we will come across as we head west will change, so I want to ascertain beforehand which ones we can eat and which ones we can't. As expected though, there weren't any monsters stronger than orcs. The orcs are definitely the ones in control of this region. Yet for some reason, I can't find them no matter how much I try. Or could it be that I'm mistaken and the orcs actually only passed through the west? As suspicion started to cloud my thoughts, I noticed that the sun was high up the sky. I shouldn't go too deep yet. The ringing bells in my chest, warning me of danger, said that, and I decided to put off the area I suspect the orcs to be living at for later. As we went back, I had the goblins trained by fighting the lizard doubles and giant ants as much as possible. When the other scouting parties, Gi-Gu and Gi-Ga, came back, we ended our reconnaissance. The other scouting parties didn't find any orcs either. Why? The northwest is one thing as the grey wolves were there, but there being no orcs in the west and southwest as well. What's going on? Could there be something going on in the background? If there is, then there's only one question. That is, whether that change is good for us or bad for us. The next day I left Gi-Za and Gi-Ga in charge of protecting the village and hunting for our food while I took the remaining goblin raiders with me, and headed northwest. When I left the village, Gi-Za asked me if there was anything that needed to be done, and so I asked him to have a path open toward the hunting grounds of the spear deer. After all, it wouldn't be very efficient to have to struggle just to bring back the spoils, so having the route cleared would be best. I couldn't find any trace of the orcs, so we're heading back to whatever's left of Gi-Go's village to use as a base for our reconnaissance. From there, I'm going to send my subordinates to all 4 directions to scout. And so, with 2 goblins under every goblin rare, we headed northwest. We already knew the path this time around, so we were able to get to Gi-Go's village much faster. We left in the morning, and by night time, we were already at the ruins of Gi-Go's village. It's already nighttime, so we'll retire for the day, and scout tomorrow. Only, there's a little problem. I can't fit into the entrance of the cave. Sigh, well there's nothing else to it. I'll just have to spend the night out in the fields. It's only one night, so it should be fine. I had the goblins alternate keeping watch, then I hunted some prey at my leisure. After that, I went to sleep. The next day, we went out to scout. I instructed the goblins to return immediately should they sense danger. Then I went to the nest of the grey wolves that's near the village. This cave coupled with Gi Go's cave should be able to house approximately 100 goblins. There's danger in living in two different places, but it's not bad considering we'll only be using them temporarily. If there are any problems, it would have to be my feelings. After all, this is the same cave where I killed the grey wolves and picked up their pups. When I entered the cave, the only thing remaining there was the lifeless corpse of a grey wolf that's now only pelt and bones. I won't ask for forgiveness for killing your spouse. But in exchange, I will raise your pups healthy. I gathered the bones, and dug a hole. There, I buried the lifeless corpse of the grey wolf. As for its pelt, it could be useful, so I took it with me. You will let me use this pelt. For the sake of furthering my dream. I looked around every corner of the cave until my subordinates' return. The cave was big, but it seemed to have only been inhabited by the grey wolves. That's convenient, I muttered to myself. I waited for my subordinates as I pondered on the candidates for our base. When dusk came, my goblin subordinates returned, and I received their report. There were no orcs in the surrounding area. What's the meaning of this? I muttered. I ate as I listened to my goblin subordinates' reports, then I thought of the course we will be taking to myself. There are no orcs a day's distance around the settlement. Normally, that's something I would be happy about. But for some reason, I don't know why, there's something tugging at me, and I can't settle down. We've searched so much. We've gone here and there, looking for any signs of orc, and yet we can't find any. Is anything the matter? Asked Gi Gu as he observed my pondering face. Tomorrow, we'll look for a route toward the west, I replied. There's no point in racking my head over the orcs forever. Tomorrow, we'll go deep into the orcs' territory, and look for their homes. Gi Go, I called. Yes, he responded. Are there any areas a day's distance from here where 100 goblins can sleep at? Gi Go thought for a while, and then he nodded. There is the rock mountain that we used before, he said. I asked for the details, and apparently, when Gi Go was still a normal goblin, they lived at a rock mountain. But the orcs took over that rock mountain, so they left. I wonder, is it too early to attack the orcs now? Should I keep on scouting? I suppose we could take a look first, and then retreat when their numbers are too many. With those thoughts, I decided. Good. We'll prioritize that area in our reconnaissance tomorrow. Gi Go, I'll rely on you to lead the way. Understood, nodded Gi Go. After that, we retired for the day. The next day, as soon as we finished gathering food, we headed toward the rock mountain with Gi Go leading the way. We walked through the thickets, carefully paying attention to our surroundings. But as expected, there were no orcs. The rock mountain, though called a mountain, isn't very tall. It's at most around 4 meters high. About a head taller than the taller trees. Many holes could be seen on the rock, making it look like heaps of bedrocks piled on top of another. The area surrounding that rock mountain showed proof of the orcs' habitation as the area was cut clean. This way, said Gi Go, who appeared to be puzzled at the orcs' disappearance. We continued to observe the rock mountain from a distance while hidden in the thickets, but no orcs ever came. As expected, no orcs, I muttered. Night drew close, and still, no orcs came. Let's climb it, I said. With Gi Go and the rest in tow, we climbed the mountain. No orcs were there either. What's going on? Those puzzled words echoed at the darkness, unanswered. There, at the apex of the mountain where the land could be seen, I looked west. The forest extended throughout the whole land, but there were spots on it where little trees could be seen. Then from a distance, a mountain that was so tall it appeared to reach the heavens could be seen. Something is happening. That premonition tugged at me, and when we descended the mountain, I ended the reconnaissance, and headed home. Grey wolf pelt acquired. Author's note. Describing topography is so difficult. Sad. The reason why the cave of the grey wolves isn't inhabited by any other creature is because the grey wolf stench there is thick. That smell prevents other creatures from entering. By the way, the pelt and the bones being left behind sure feels like an item drop, huh? Volume 1, Chapter 36. Madness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 61, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, High Kobold, LV1, Grey Wolf, LV1, X2, Abnormal Status. I had the goblins hunt lizard doubles and pickle snaps as we headed home. My worries haven't been eased, but there's no helping it right now. All the worrying in the world won't change anything. I should focus on what I can do for now. And that thing I can do is to raise everyone's level. I watched over the fight of the goblins as I thought that to myself. The prey today are 2 lizard doubles. Gi Go, the Samuraish warrior, and his 3 goblins surround the prey from the left, while the leader of the former village, Gi Gu, and his 3 goblins, surrounded from the right. The 2 groups attacked the lizard doubles from both sides, repeatedly aiming for their feet. The lizard doubles have 6 feet each. The attacks of the 2 groups aimed for those feet at almost the same time. The attacks coming from both directions disoriented the lizard doubles, leaving them helpless. There, Gi Go's curved katana and Gi Gu's long sword struck out, and blood spurted out into the air. The open wound left by their attacks were then stabbed incessantly by their subordinate's chipped sword. As the lizard doubles screamed and writhed in pain, 2 blades struck at their necks, and the battle ended. Looks like the goblins have gotten used to fighting together. At this level, they should be able to deal with at least 2 orcs. Any more than that though is still a problem. We hurried on our way as the goblins ate the lizard doubles' meat. At our hurried pace, we managed to reach the village by midnight, and Gi Za welcomed us. I see you're in quite a hurry, Gi Za said, as he eyed the knackered goblins lying on the ground. He is a druid and a goblin rare, but his appearance looked much closer to that of a human's. Well, there's something bothering me, I replied. I don't know what's bothering you, but that aside, how about seeing the newly made house for the king, he said back. What? Newly created. The humans you brought here have been working hard since the village has been left in their hands. They even tried building houses for the goblins, proudly replied Gi Za as he led me to the king's house. As we walked, I listened to his report on the things that happened while I was out. The route leading to the hunting grounds of the spear deer have apparently been widened. Goblins have been hunting spear deer for a while now, so they looked for a way to make it more convenient to get there. With that, they were able to answer to my orders regarding securing a good route toward the spear deer. The spear deer are situated northwest from the lake. The goblins love to eat them for their large body. Moreover, their hunting grounds are also frequently used to raise levels. But because their bodies are big, it takes a considerable amount of effort just bringing them back. With the widening of the road toward them, securing food should be much more convenient now. As I listened to Gi Za's report, we eventually reached the previously mentioned house of the king. It felt like the house I was using before had gotten bigger. The work put into this bigger house is about what you'd expect from a 3-day work that took place while I was gone. Isn't this too extravagant? I asked. You're 2NA.VE. You should at least use your resources like this, replied Gi Za. I'm aware, but I have my own methods, I complained. That might be so, but isn't it fine, shrugged Giza as he opened the door. Inside was Reshia, sleeping with Gastra and Cynthia curled into a ball in her arms. Cynthia and Gastra both looked much bigger than when I had left. Lily was also there along with the other women. As soon as we entered, the pups' ears perked up to the sound of the door opening, and the two pups looked my way. Woof, barked the two pups. The two pups' voice woke Reshia up. Oh, welcome home, said Reshia as she rubbed her sleepy eyes, then she went back to sleep. Contrary to Reshia's attitude, the other women were looking at me stiff with fearful eyes. Cynthia and Gastra frolicked by my feet. Can you explain exactly what is going on here? I asked as I scowled at Giza. A mischievous smile appeared on Giza's face. I explained the results of my reconnaissance to Giza and the old goblin, and they both knitted their brows. I don't know anything aside from the information I have, said Giza. But a new king might have been born amongst the orcs. A king? Well, if the goblins can have a king, then I suppose they can too. It's not that strange. Just as the goblins have 4 big clans, the orcs have their own clans as well, began the old goblin as his wrinkled face wrinkled even deeper. According to the old goblin, when a king is born, the orc clan that lived next to us, along with the rest of the orc clans, will all gather under the orc king. The orc that leads the orcs is known as the orc king. That being will lead the orcs out of the forest, and attack the human world. A sort of mad phenomenon apparently. But the scariest part is that the orcs won't stop until the orc king is dead. The orcs led by the orc king will keep moving forward even when their legs are struck, even when their arms are lost, and even when magic is casted against them. The orcs won't stop unless they're dead or the orc king is. Orc king, that's an existence that's more handful than running triple horns. So that's how it is, I nodded. There's definitely a possibility that the surrounding orcs disappeared because of the birth of the new orc king. The orcs under the orc king will become maddened, and they will run together as one horde. I don't know what their goal or purpose is. Well, isn't this a lovely situation? I cursed to myself as the edges of my mouth curved. All of the orc clans, huh? I muttered. The orcs normally move in hordes of 2 to 6. But with the king's appearance, they will march as one horde. If that frightening battle prowess of theirs that's strong enough to threaten the human world is pointed toward this village, it won't be something to scoff at. Can you pinpoint the course their horde will take? I asked. The old goblin shook his head. Well, in any case, it's not something we can make light of, shrugged Giza. Make light of? Exactly how are we supposed to make light of a horde of maddened cows? Do you know anything else about the madness of the orcs? I asked. Giza and the old goblin both shook their heads. We lack information. But in the worst case, we'll have to at least strengthen our defenses. Make holes outside the village tomorrow. We'll make pitfalls, I ordered. If it was just me and the goblin raiders, avoiding the orcs would be an easy task. We could scout, and just simply avoid them. But the settlement also has humans, non-combatants, and female goblins. Their legs are too slow, running won't be an option with them around. So there's no choice but to strengthen the settlement as quickly as possible. Understood, nodded Giza. The old goblin quietly nodded too, and we ended the discussion. Still. For a king to be born amongst the orcs. I was beaten to the chase, but, madness. If that is something that occurs when one becomes a king. If that is something that occurs involuntarily. If that is something that occurs regardless of the goblin's will, or perhaps even my own, causing us to move by instinct, then. When I thought of that, the sound of gritting rose as my teeth gritted against itself. I closed my eyes, and confirmed written there on my status. If that phenomenon does occur, how far will I be able to resist? It feels as if the more my magic power increases, the more I hear the footsteps of that woman, Altesia, coming from the darkness. Her influence has been kept away because of Zenobia's power. If so, then wouldn't the power of her interference become even stronger the next time she tries to interfere with my thoughts? I need more power. A power that does not belong to anyone else. A power that belongs to me. My own power. "Excuse me, may I take some of your time?" said a voice. I opened my eyes. There, Giga was meekly standing before me. "Go ahead," I nodded, as I kept my anxiety hidden within me. Lord Giza said it was not necessary, but I asked him what he was talking about, and when he explained, I was shocked. Apparently, there was a goblin who tried to attack a human female while I was gone. Giga executed that goblin. Actually, the one who ordered the execution was Lord Giza, said Giga. Lord Giza said that since he was in charge while the king was gone, he should take on the thankless role. I closed my eyes with my arms folded. I did think that a situation such as that might occur one day, but I wanted to believe in the goblins, so I closed my eyes. But apparently, I was too na.ve. I recalled Giza's vow of fealty and his wry smile. I didn't believe that Lord Giza should be the only one responsible for the execution, so I took it upon myself to share the burden. So I came here today to ask you, O King. Please, be lenient with Lord Giza, begged Giga as he prostrated himself before me. Reflexively, I looked up this building. So that's why he made a new house. It would appear that the goblins have been looking after me a lot more than I thought they were. And apparently, I've also been blessed with subordinates better than I thought. I understand. I'll close my eyes to this matter this time, I told him. I am grateful for the king's generosity, thanked Giga. You did well informing me, Giga. No. And regarding my punishment, since I won't be punishing Giza, naturally, I won't be punishing you as well, right? Thank you, King. I had Giga withdraw, then I fell into deep thought again that I need to tighten the bridle again. And then I looked toward the nearby Reshia and the curled-up Cynthia and Gastra. I can't be as soft to Giga and Giza all the time. The matter needs to be investigated as well. There's the possibility that a truth opposite to what had been stated might come. It's possible that contrary to what Giga said, Giza himself executed a goblin at his own leisure. It would be better if that's not the case, I wished that from the bottom of my heart. But I have to consider the possibility. And the fact that I had to consider that possibility made me disgusted with myself. Author's note. The king's house has become the biggest building in the settlement. It's now big enough to accommodate all of the female and children slaves. Unfortunately, though, there are barely any furniture. In fact, the bed in it is just straw with greenery spread on top of it. Really, the interior gives off a desk, chair, bed. What are those feeling? The only thing it really has is a door. Volume 1, Chapter 37. Preparations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 61, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, High Kobold, LV1, Gastra, LV1, Cynthia, LV1, Abnormal Status. The orcs could attack us at any time, and yet the situation inside the village isn't favorable. Many in the village are dissatisfied and even the goblins themselves are in a shaky situation. But still, I can't give up here. I asked Lily and Reshia to investigate Giga's recent report. From their investigation, I found out that Giza was telling the truth. That incident isn't something to scoff at, however. Its effect can be visibly seen in the humans. The fear that had once been stilled has once again risen in their hearts. The eyes they look at me, brimming with fear. But with the bad comes the good, and I now see Giza with a stronger sense of security. Not only is the goblin's visage close to that of humans, but he also handled the previous situation excellently. Surely, I can rely on him more. From now on I'll most likely be relying on Gi Za's horde of druids whenever I leave, but I still need to make more goblin rares. I'll be needing them to achieve my goals. Goblins get smarter as they evolve. A single class up can make a huge difference. You could liken it to the dispersing of a great, thick fog within the mind of the goblins, freeing them from a rabid thirst. The more goblin rares I have, the less chances there will be of such incidents as the one before from occurring. Moreover, in this way, I can also strengthen my army. As for the village, Gi Za's proven that I can rely on him, so I'll be leaving the protection of the village in his and his druids' hands. If possible, I'd like to avoid any friction in the village as there's a pressing issue that needs to be addressed. How do I deal with the maddened orcs? I need men working to solve this problem. I can't afford an internal dispute now. I had gone out to scout before, so I had to put a stop to it, but now that I'm here again, I'll have to start that training again. The goblins tend to think of dumb things when they don't know who's in charge. So once every 5 days, I'll have the goblins stand before me, and I will subdue them with my strength. If they know who's boss, they won't dare cause trouble. A lot of problems come up when I personally go out to scout, so this time I had a scouting party made with Gi Gu, the former leader of the village, as the center along with Gi and Gi Go. They are to head northwest of the village. Then I ordered Gi to take out the goblins that are close to leveling up to hunt the spear deer. It's imperative that we bolster our forces as soon as possible. Then I had the remaining goblins dig holes around the village, creating pitfalls and ditches. I did this until the sun was high up the sky. At which point, I then left the command of the trap-making squad to Gi Za. And I scurried off to begin the goblin so-called Day of Fear. When that ended, I took the grey wolf pups, Cynthia and Gastra, out to hunt. I wonder if I could use these two to keep watch around the village. Fortunately, thanks to Reshia and Lily, they're not scared of humans. In fact, they've even taken a liking to them. But liking's just liking. As for whether I'll be able to use them in that way, that's left to be seen. With the 2 grey wolf pups in tow, we ran through the forest. I know little of the ways the grey wolves hunt, but the pups would by themselves try to kill any prey we would come across, saving me the headache of instructing. Unfortunately, they still have a long way to go as even rabbits could outrun them. So I caught an armor rabbit, broke its legs, and then rolled it over toward the 2. Like this they should naturally understand where they need to bite to kill the rabbit. I suppose this should count as one way of studying hunting. After I had ascertained that the grey wolf pups had stuffed themselves full, we went back to the village. The ditches and pitfalls were still only 33% done by the time we had returned. Evening came and Gi Ga's hunting squad returned. There, I saw an unfamiliar goblin rare. "King," said Gi Ga, "a new goblin rare has joined our ranks." At that introduction, the goblin rare kneeled, and I took a look at the new goblin rare with its status floated up. Race, Goblin, Level, 1, Class, Rare, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, None, Attributes, None. I took a look at the description for the new skill. Allows one to meld with the surrounding, making himself harder for the enemy to spot. Come to think of it, I have been employing stealth tactics lately. Concealing ourselves and quietly closing in on our enemies. It's probably because of that this goblin learned this skill. I thought that to myself, then fixing my glance back at the goblin, I spoke. "I'll give you a name," I said. "Yes," the goblin nodded exaggeratedly. "Your name shall be Gig." I gave the best of the spoils amongst the meat hunted today to the new goblin rare whose head was still deeply bowed, Gig. His eyes sparkled as he received the meat, and then he withdrew himself from my presence and enjoyed his meal. Meanwhile, Gastra and Cynthia slept peacefully atop my shin guards that were built with the pelt of the grey wolves. I caressed the pups as they slept, thinking to myself, I need to train the goblins how to fight as a horde as well. Gi Go, Gi Gu, and Gi Za are all former leaders of their respective villages. As such, they have plenty of experience leading their subordinates. But Gi Ga, Gi Gi, and the new goblin rare, Gi G, are different. They have always been living under another goblin's rule. They don't know how to lead. Although, Gi Ga and Gi Gi, I have to say, aren't too bad at it. After all, they have been hunting along with their horde for some time now. They have already accumulated some experience. But Gi G, on the other hand. I suppose I could have them do a mock battle. No, I probably should. After all, I don't think I'll be able to laugh if the goblins can't coordinate with each other when the orcs attack. Not even their clumsiness would put a smile to my face at such an unfavorable predicament. The goblins should also keep up their hunt to level up into goblin rares as soon as possible. Although whether that'll be enough experience depends on the situation at hand. Right now, we have far too little time. And in this short time, I must build a horde strong enough to fight. We can't take our time. We must go with haste before the orcs' forces become a wave, and crashes itself against us. The goblins shouldn't be able to do anything foolish while I'm around. And with Lily and the other 2 warriors around, we should also be able to train how to fight against humans. Regardless, there are many problems. Many things that need to be addressed. Realizing that, I couldn't help but smile wryly to myself. Amongst those problems, there are some that I simply cannot do anything about. I can only wait and hope for Gi Gu's return. Hopefully he finds a route to the west. When it comes to waiting, patience is a must. Or in Reshia's words, she would laugh and say, "Good. You finally understand what it's like to be me, always being made to wait by you." Although, I do think this is more of a problem of character. Goblins, you see, prefer striking to waiting. Yesterday, I thought of having the goblins do a mock battle. After much pondering, I finally thought of how to do it. And so I ordered Gi G and the druid, Gi Za, to partake in my new training. Each of them are to take 5 groups of 3-man cells under them, totaling to 15 goblins under each of their lead. They are to be equipped with wooden swords and spears, while I made sure to instruct Gi Za to hold back on the magic. After all, I wouldn't want anyone to die. That'd be troubling. When the goblins finished their Day of Fear, I had them line up, and when I counted 30 goblins, I had them prepare. Mock battle on this scale is extremely rare amongst goblins. When the old goblin saw it along with the other goblins, they were alarmed. But shortly after, they quieted down and only watched attentively. Lily, Reshia, and the other humans also watched with interest. In order to differentiate the 2 groups, I had the goblins on Gi Za's side paint their arms red, while the other group was left colorless. Then after confirming that the goblins were ready, I gave the signal to start. Start. At that, the colorless group led by Gi G gathered into a lump as they ran. The goblins prefer striking over defending. That fact was truly embodied in Gi G's decision to charge madly. "Go!" yelled Gi G. "Win and the king will reward us." Spurred by the prospect of being rewarded, Gi G lead his horde as he charged toward his foe. Spear. But in response, Gi Za only had his horde raise their spears forward. Being able to instruct them with such few words, it seems he's been training his goblins well. Raise your spears. At Gi Za's command, the goblins under Gi Za all uniformly raised their spears toward the sky. Strike. Did he calculate the distance? I thought to myself. And as if responding to that question, the raised spears all struck down toward the incoming horde. Pained cries rose, and many goblins fell, but still the colorless horde charged. Again. Swords, BL.net at Gi Za's command, the red horde raised their spears once more. And at his command, the goblins wielding wooden swords went around the colorless horde, and attacked them from their flanks. Onwards. Gig grappled with the spearmen of the red horde, unfazed by the strikes of the wooden spears. He swung his sword as he pleased, and no one could stop him. But the red horde struck from the flanks, and the front line was pushed. Surround them. The red horde allowed the colorless horde to take their distance, but meeting them at the back was the red horde swordsman. With his horde surrounded, Gig lost the fight. That's enough. At my command, the goblins kneeled and their heads bowed. Just as expected, the gap between a goblin rare like Giz who has had experience as a chief of a horde and someone like Gig who has just become a goblin rare is big. I want to lead a horde of goblins to fight against a goblin that's above the goblin rare class, so I need to train these goblins and produce some results. It doesn't matter whether it's hunting or fighting. When it comes to teaching, the best way is to take a step yourself. Volume 1, Chapter 38. The night before the war. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 61, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, High Kobold, LV1, Gastra, LV1, Cynthia, LV1, Abnormal Status. For days had passed by the time Gigu's scouting party returned. When I went out to meet them, I was shocked. Gigu's appearance had changed. Blue skin and a lone coiled horn. A stature that was a size bigger compared to Gigo. I took a peek at his status with the and there was no doubt about it. He was now a noble class. Race, Goblin, Level, 2, Class, Noble, Sub-Leader, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, none, Attributes, none when fighting under the orders of the Horde's leader, Fighting Spirit up, Physical Strength 10%, Agility 10% up. Attacking together is possible with goblins of the same or lower rank. Can use any melee weapon, and receive assistance up to rank C+ regardless of type. Chance of success when scouting increases. Chance of successfully tracking the enemy also increases. Gigu is a former horde chief. The strength shown in his status is proof of that. The skill is quite useful for ordering squads. As for this, I wonder if it'll work even when we're separated by distance. Lastly, this skill, I wonder if he learned this because I've always been using him to scout. I'll have to clarify the points I don't understand later. I have returned, said Giz as he kneeled. The wounds on his body showed proof of the mission's harshness. Tell me what you found. I left the training of the goblins to Giga for the time being, then I went ahead and asked the results of his scouting. At the same time, I gave them fresh meat to eat. The goblins quietly bowed to me. I'll begin with the results. We have confirmed the orcs' numbers. Currently, there are over 80 orcs in their horde. As of now, they are en route toward this fortress. 80, so this is where that bad feeling has been coming from. Sheet. My heart wavered, but I meticulously paid attention not to let it show as I continued to inquire. How long before they arrive? 2 days at most. As I nodded to Gigu, I folded my arms. Sheet. It's too early. So you're telling me they won't even give me time to prepare? But that doesn't mean I'm the kind of idiot that would just sit and wait here doing nothing. Their course. They are marching directly west of us. 80, huh? I fell into a deep thought as I looked over the horizon to the west. Confining ourselves to the village was a bad idea from the start. Once the village is surrounded, I won't be able to see everything from the front. So that means confining ourselves to the village is a last resort. Besides, the traps aren't even complete. They are at most only 50% done. Even if the orcs charged from in front, it wouldn't be strange for them to just trample over the traps. I understand the situation now. Good work. I locked my feelings deep inside me, not letting even the slightest emotion show as I closed my eyes. After I allowed the goblins that had just returned to rest, I went over to help complete the traps. From the start, goblins specialized at making holes. Holes that orcs could fit into that are filled with sharp bamboos and wooden spears. The holes themselves are also deeper than the orc's stature. I also want to fill the holes with water, but unfortunately we really don't have the time for that. We'll just have to make it vertical enough that the orcs won't be able to climb up. I'll also order the humans to concentrate their fences toward the west side of the village. I don't know how much they can repair in the next 2 days, but hopefully we can at least have some fences ready from the west to the northwest. The orcs number too many. We can't fight them directly. A head-on confrontation like that will only lead to our immediate defeat. There's no other way. We'll have to hit them first. We needed to get resources for the village constructions, so the trees in the surrounding were cut. Thanks to that we have a better view of the area now. Too bad we don't have bows though. A weapon that would allow us to defeat the orcs from a distance would have been great. Not that there's any point in talking about things that aren't around. In any case, if we are to intercept the orcs, then the best place to attack is the forest. If they're planning to charge here directly, then we should be able to delay them by attacking from their flanks. And then by using the druid's magic and the goblins with the throwing skill, it should be possible to minimize the casualties. After that, we could take the remaining orcs in a melee. And after wiping them, we could then take the orc king's head. When I finished thinking up the strategy, I ran over it again to check for any holes. I need to carefully choose who to send in the intercepting squad as well as the location. I'll also have to prepare an escape route in the worst-case scenario. It's not just because we're heading west that I'm doing this. There's also the fact that we can't leave this area. Ignoring the welling impatience from within, my mouth twisted into a wry smile as I headed over to Giga to check on his progress. The training needs to be halted for the time being. It's imperative that we have the holes dug as soon as possible. A day had passed since I received Giga's report. Right now, I'm having Giga lead me to confirm the orcs' trail. Following us were Giga and Giga. In the meantime, the excavation of the holes and the ditches have been left to Giza. While I had the beast warrior, Giga, and the stealthy Gig see just how close the orcs have gotten to our village. It's not that I'm doubting Giga's information, it's just that I want to ensure that nothing unexpected happens. Of course, I made sure to make it clear to Giga and Gig that they were to return without fighting. It should be possible as long as they made use of Giga's beast sniffing abilities. We tried following the trail Giga led us to follow, but the only thing that entered our sights were the flat woodlands that had nothing of note. Now I wonder where we should wait for the orcs. Being this rattled over something on this level. It seems I haven't been blessed with insight by the goddess of wisdom, Hera. The number of orcs that we can deal with using the 3-man cells is 30. So we'll need to somehow reduce that 80 orcs into 30 using traps. If the orcs reach my village, that'll be the end. Even if we're not annihilated, my dream of building a kingdom will end right then and there. At that thought, the image of Reshia and the other humans being trampled by the orc horde flashed through my mind. But even then, it's still better for them to head straight for the village. If the orc king has been blessed with wisdom, and instead leads his people through a different path, then the village will surely fall. The humans only built the fences to cover from the village's west to its northwest. Normally, it would have been better if I'd thought of an escape route, but we don't have enough information about the orcs' madness. If they just up and left and headed east after forcing us out of the village, that would be great. But if they still pursue us, we'll be nothing but helpless prey before them since we don't have a place to run to. So there's only one option for us to make. That is to ambush them, lead them to the village, and annihilate them. We can only hope that the orcs will trip themselves here. Honestly, something like this can't even be called a plan. At most it's just wishful thinking. That fact doesn't sit right with me, but it can't be helped. Alright, we'll put up the traps around this area. And then we'll get a scout to King. Just as I was about to order Gi Gu and the others to put up the traps and scout, a voice called out from behind. It was Gi, who was riding on a double head, rushing toward us with a desperate expression on his face. The orcs have changed route, he exclaimed. They are coming from the north. Fuck. The worst case really happened. Come to think of it, the west is full of trees, woodlands with not much room to step on. While the northwest that the grey wolves favored have patches of unobstructed plains. Damn it. I should have seen this coming a mile away, and yet. Return to the village. Now. At my order, we made haste for the village. The traps in the village were concentrated toward the west. Do we have enough time to set up traps for the north? Do we have enough time to set up the necessary traps to deal with 80 orcs in a day? Impossible. Of course, it's impossible. If it was just the fight against the orcs, then I'm confident I could beat them with my skill and strength. But in this fight I have to protect the village while annihilating 80 orcs. Damn it, why the north? But not only did they change route, they even chose a route with plenty of space. They're definitely being led by the Orc King. And apparently, the king isn't an idiot. With that, the chances for the traps to succeed have dropped significantly. There's still a chance that they might just head east afterwards, but those bastards need to eat. So, no. There's no way they would let delicious prey such as ourselves run. The orcs are headed here from the north, but exactly from which direction will they come from? Will it be directly north or northwest? No, thinking about it a little, it would probably be directly north. As for why it's directly north, it's because the path toward the lake to the north has been widened. The route we widened to make hunting convenient has unexpectedly backfired on us. Think. There has to be something. Something that could stop them. By the time we got to the village, I still hadn't thought of anything. For the meantime, I decided to focus on making traps to the north. But even while I was digging holes, the only thing that was in my head was thinking of a way to beat the orcs. But what can I do? In the end, the day passed with me being unable to think of anything but to make traps. As for the humans, I had them repair the fences as fast as they could. And then for the goblins, I had them dig holes that the orcs could get stuck in. But that's all. Can we win with just this? My heart grew impatient as my thoughts continued to race. In the end, I could do nothing but lament my powerlessness. Who would have thought that the responsibility of having so many lives on your shoulders would be this heavy? And the image that keeps flashing through my mind, showing the orcs trampling all over us, is honestly scary. Sheet. I can't lose. I can't possibly lose. I know that. It's precisely because I know that it's so heavy. But despite all my efforts, in the end, the night came with no good news. As the twin moonlight lit the evening sky, I looked up. I had been loitering around the village all this time by myself, pondering to myself, when suddenly, a voice came. "Can't sleep?" asked the voice. The moonlight fell on her visage, revealing her unparalleled beauty. Bathed in moonlight, it was as if she was the moonlight goddess, Vidina, herself. It was dark, but my eyes could see as if it were day, and I saw her expression. It was as unfeeling and expressionless as always. But somehow, it carried with it a tinge of gentleness. Yeah, I looked toward the evening sky again. A strange sight, Reshia said as she walked over, stealing a glance at the expression on my face. I suppose, I quietly replied. Perhaps I am scared. That might be it. The war will be upon us tomorrow, yet the path to victory remains a blur. But even then, I have to win. Even if it means throwing this body away. If I lose everything. I see, muttered Reshia, seemingly deep in thought. Then after a while, as if she had thought of something, she looked up toward me again. Mind if I take a seat? She asked as she sat beside me, who was sitting cross-legged. Can we talk for a bit? Do what you want, I curtly replied. Like that we began to talk. Her voice was smooth, velvety in its flow like those of a minstrel's. Each of her words resounded within my shaking chest. In the past, there was a beast known as Moon Beast, she said. I wonder if she has a script at the back of her eyelids. I've never heard her stutter over her words. Each word of hers were clear and fluent. That beast was hated by the humans, but even then it lived beside them, she said. The tale she spoke of was that of a beast that possessed a human's heart. But though it possessed a human's heart, its pelt was sharp like needles, hurting allies and foe alike. The closer the beast tried to be, the more pain it inflicted on its friend. And the further the beast went, the colder the beast became. It was that sort of story. But then one day, a lone girl showed favor to that beast, Reshia said. The outcome is a tragedy. That's a given. There's a similar story in my country as well. But of course, the moon beast hurt the girl, and it was greatly saddened. At this point, I suddenly felt like asking her what she wants to tell me. It was then that the girl thought of something. What? Then how about we pluck off all the needles, she said. Oi. Surprised, I couldn't help but move my gaze away from the moons back to Reshia. And so the girl and the moon beast no longer had to fight. And they were able to live happily ever after. The end, Reshia said as she concluded her story. A rather original story, I commented. This girl, she changed the ending, didn't she? And what's the moral of the story? I asked. Who knows? She grinned. Hey, is that really all right? Aren't you someone from the church? Having received a response like that, I couldn't help but look at this sweetly smiling girl with a suspicious gaze. Well, it can't be helped. I did just make up the ending after all, she confessed. As expected. But I prefer this ending. A short and tragic story is fine too, but in the end, I'd rather everyone be happy. It's not wrong to wish that sort of wish, right? Is that the dream of a girl that doesn't know reality? Or is it because you dream such dreams that you are called a saint? Perhaps, I replied. If you can understand that much, then I think it's more than enough for a moral lesson, Reshia said as she excused herself to a night's rest. Ah, wryly smiling, I looked up toward the moons. Apparently, she was trying to cheer me up. I suppose what she was trying to say is, if the result is obvious, then why don't you try to change it forcefully? Or something. I guess. Did my worries show on my face? I caressed my face, trying to check if it did, but in the end, I couldn't figure it out. But my heart has gotten lighter. It's not so bad, the lessons from an adherent. At that moment, a flame was lit in that now peaceful heart. A flame called resolve, the resolve to fight. I had forgotten it just a while ago, but now I remember it well. As I looked up to the moons floating in the evening sky, I thanked Reshia. And then it hit me. Forcefully, I see. Maybe just maybe, there might be a chance for victory. It took a long time, but finally, the goddess of wisdom's, Hera's, blessing has come. There, I stood up, and I went to wake Gi and Gi. Volume 1, Chapter 39. Clash I. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 61, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, High Kobold, LV1, Gastra, LV1, Cynthia, LV1, Abnormal Status, GIG reported to me the last known information regarding the Orcs' route. And as expected, they'll be attacking from the north. Gi-za, I'll leave the traps to you, I said. Good grief. We've been working since last night, Gi-za complained as he gave the orders to the other goblins. Ednel.co The orcs will attack in the latter half portion of the day. We don't have time to relax. GIGA, go lead 5 groups each, and prepare to intercept the enemy. After attacking once, go hide in the forest to the west, I said. As you will. Understood, they each replied. GIGA, the both of you as well. Take 5 groups under each of your command, and then come follow me, I said to the other 2 goblins. As you command. Very well, they each replied. As for the village defense, I'll leave that under your care, Giza. Give the orcs hell, I said. Leave it to me, he replied. GGI has already gone ahead under my orders. Are there any questions left? I asked. The goblins did not say anything. I nodded in response to their silence. Today, we shall battle with the orcs, I began. Know this fight is not only to defend our home, it is also an opportunity given to us to end the orcs once and for all. We have been at war with them for far too long. Let this battle be the last. Let it end our long struggle against them. Let it end as triumph for the goblins. Hua! They cheered in affirmation. Under me are 10 groups, totaling to 30 goblins plus a rare class, and a noble class. Fighting as a separate force are 15 goblins under Gigi's lead. As for Giza, he has 23 groups with him that total to about 70 goblins. It's because he is also using the goblins that had just turned adult along with all the old goblins that his forces number turned that way. As for the humans, they are being led by Lily. Once the orc enters the village, the humans will have to fight for themselves. Now, go. At that last command, we departed. As the sound of trees being pulled resounded. Pyuguaa. An orc wearing heavy armor and shield could be seen leading a horde of orcs. And following that orc was an orc wielding a long spear. Clouds of dust rose as the orcs reached the lake. In an act of recklessness, the lizard men tried to put a stop to them, but they were pulverized. Trampled underfoot, their entrails left a trail toward the south. That is to say, a trail toward our village. Damn bastards! Split into 2 groups, I commanded. The squads of Gigu who had just turned into a noble class and Giga whose arm was longer than other goblins. Together, total to 30 goblins. Then under me were Samuraish warrior Gigos, and the stealthy Gig's squads. We will attack the moment they enter the forest. Don't miss the signal. Traveling through the forest, we waited under the wind. We can't make light of these bastards and their good noses. There are many other living creatures that come to the lake to drink water, so the area around the lake is fairly open. From there's a road being maintained by us to make the transport of the spear deer easier. But aside from that lone road, the area around is still a forest. Taking advantage of that, we positioned ourselves on both sides of the road. One group to the left, another to the right. Orcs have a tendency to cut down swaths of forest as they proceed, but it's not like they'd actually bother to cut everything. If there's a road, then they'll make use of it. But because of that, their horde will naturally shape itself into a line. And once the orcs have lined themselves up nicely like that, then commanding them will obviously become harder. Now's the time. Take them from behind. When half the orc horde had entered the road, we began our attack. I led the charge with Iron Second, while Gigu and Giga attacked from the other side. Like this we pummeled the orcs at the back of their horde. Turn me into a blade. Enchant, I don't have the luxury of holding back, so we'll go at full power right from the start. Gurua. I invocate and at the same time, I clad my blade in magic power. Like that my blade sunk into an orc's large frame without even giving it time to fight back. Fight them with the 3-man-cell like we practiced. I ordered the other goblins that after killing an orc, Gi Go and Gi's squad fought against the wave of orcs that started fighting back. The first shall break the foe's stance, the second shall stop his movement, and the last shall finish the foe. That is the method to defeat the orcs. However, that too was quickly overturned. Pyugujiue. An orc stance was broken as planned, but suddenly the orc bellowed out in rage, and he grew mad. The maddened orc then quickly fixed his posture as he stood up. At this time, the orc horde that had entered the road began to regroup with the orcs that haven't entered yet as the center. They began to turn around, and they started fighting back without any regard to their own bodies. In response, Gi Go was able to pull the orcs away to help the other goblins, but Gi, who had just become a rare class, could not do such a risky stunt. The goblins somehow managed to dodge the orcs' attack by themselves, but because of that, they were not able to fight with the same vigor as they did before. If someone's gonna save them, then I guess it'll have to be me. As I cut down the orc headed toward Gi, I gave him an order. Follow me. I commanded. Follow the king. Ordered Gi to his subordinate goblins as he raised his sword. In response, the goblins formed 3-man groups again and followed after me. I charged forward, and I blew away an orc with my iron second. When the orc fell, I ordered the goblins to finish him. Pyugue. But killing the orcs couldn't be done in one hit. So I had to stop the orc's flailing club with my great sword. Our weapons locked. And another orc passed by me, and headed toward the other goblins. This is exactly why it's a pain fighting against so many. The orc wielded his sword against one of the goblins in a 3-man cell. That goblin somehow managed to stop the orc's sword, while another goblin attacked the legs of the orc. But just as the third goblin was about to kill the orc swept with his sword again. In turn, the goblin made a quick decision to stop his attack, saving his own life. Like that, they fought against the orc again. Gi and Gi Go continued to fight hard, but the orcs' large bodies were like walls that could stop the goblins' attack. It was a deadlock, neither side managing to severely injure the other. Sheet, this isn't good. I wanted to scatter them while we had the momentum on our side, but with the fight like this, it's difficult. My horde is already having a hard time with just the orcs here at the back. If the orcs from the center manage to return, this situation will topple over to their favor. I want to leave before we suffer any losses, but we haven't even hurt the orc horde enough yet. What should I do? Sheet. We're retreating. Gi Go, Gi, protect the back. I decided to retreat and meet up with the ambush squad in the forest before we suffered any losses. Move. I momentarily stopped the orcs with as we retreated. Gi Gu and Giga also seems to have heard the command as they began to distance themselves farther and farther from the orcs. Now, we have to stop and weaken the orcs as much as possible before they reach the village. For that we'll need to drag them into the forest later. Fortunately, the orcs didn't pursue us when we retreated this time. But at the same time, it's not something to be happy about. Because this means to say that they're fully intent on attacking the village at full force. How many are wounded? I asked. We need to regroup now. We have to attack the enemy horde again as soon as possible, or else. Quite the view, muttered Gi as he smiled. His gaze remained unfaltering despite the unfolding scene before him. Aim at the trapped enemies, and prepare your projectiles, he commanded. The orcs have started flowing out toward the village from the northern road. Their numbers were no less than 50 or 60. Gi ordered his subordinate druids to prepare their magic. And at the same time, he ordered the normal goblins to pick up a stone from the mountain of stones that they prepared. The king's words aren't wrong. Gi strongly believes that. And it is precisely because he believes that he can laugh despite the unfolding scene. Not an ounce of fear nor anxiety could be seen in his heart. Only feelings of excitement as he wondered to himself, now, how will the king exterminate these guys? But in order to see that, he needed to fulfill his duty. You are all to attack the area where my wind is attacking, understood? He needs to kill the orcs efficiently. He may be using the druid's magic, but there are still not many who are strong enough to take out the orcs in one hit. They need to at least hit them twice or thrice if they want to take them down. It's because of that they can't waste a shot. Guo! As the orcs cried out, showing off their strength, many goblins could be seen shivering in fear. Hear me, goblins. Warriors of the king. Suddenly, a voice sounded out from an area that could be seen even during the war. That voice reached the entire village. It was Giza's. Believe in the king. He said. The goblins of this village should understand it, he thought. At the very least, they should be starting to see it, the greatness of the king that is. It was because that man appeared that they stopped being hungry. It was because he appeared that their larvae stopped dying. It was because of him that the horde began to grow. And it's growing even more. Giza's words spread through the village in a twinkle. And at that. We believe in the king. We believe in the great king. Cheers sounded out from all over the village. That's right. If it's that man who's fighting, then we will definitely not lose. At that moment, the resolve to fight suddenly burned within the eyes of every goblin. Go! Giza narrowed his eyes at the attacking orc horde. Ready your projectiles, he commanded. The war has only just begun. Level has risen. 61. 62. Volume 1, Chapter 40. Clash 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 62, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, High Kobold, LV1, Gastra, LV1, Cynthia, LV1, Abnormal Status. The orc horde showed an opening from their flanks. And I decided to take advantage of that as they continued to close in on the village. Don't make any sound, I ordered as we ran through the thickets. I kept my hand on the iron second on my back as I made haste for the orc before us. Turn me into a blade, enchant. Immediately, I clad my blade in magic power. And with a stroke, I cut down the orc before me. Pyugiue, screamed the orc. We need to leave before the orcs gather because of that orc's dying scream, but before that. We cut down more of the crowded orcs. And after Gigo's and Gig's squads pushed back the orcs a little, we withdrew. Gurua. We couldn't even kill 5 orcs in this surprise attack. And even back when we attacked the orcs from behind a while ago, the number we killed could not even reach 6. This is bad. The orcs are tougher than expected, so the attacking power of the goblins aren't as effective as I expected they'd be. Even the battle on the other side isn't going favorably. Gigu and Giga, 2 noble class goblins, are leading their squads to fight, and yet the number of orcs they're killing are still below the expected number. It's as if we're fighting against monsters that do not tire. No matter how much we cut them, the orcs refuse to show any signs of weakening. I stood at the back as I ended the charge against the orcs. I sent Giga last night, but he still hasn't returned. When is he coming back? Those thoughts that reeked of weakness suddenly appeared within my heart. But I wielded iron second, I swept those unbecoming thoughts away. I am the king. If the one the retainers believe in stops believing in himself, what do you think will happen? I must not waver. Once more. As the orcs began to move ahead again, I resumed our attack. We'll cut you orcs as many times as we need to. It was clear even from a distance. The current situation was headed toward the worst possible conclusion. After attacking the orc horde for the 4th time, I saw the state of the village. Sheet. Half of the traps have already been used. They haven't reached the fences yet, but that's only a matter of time. The stones and the magic are continuously being shot at the orcs, and are keeping the situation together, but that too is only a matter of time. At some point, this situation will topple over in favor of the orcs. The orc horde's attack is too fierce. It might be because their king is leading them, but either way, they're charging recklessly. They're not even bothering to help their trapped brethren up as they trampled them over underfoot. Don't they know fear? I couldn't help but think that as I watched their fearless charge unfold before my eyes. After a while, the orcs finally reached the ditch. Sheet. Quickly, I looked toward the orc horde. There's still plenty of fighting force left in by the orc king who was leading the raid against the village. Compared to that, we're. I glanced at the goblins behind me, and I observed that they were all clearly exhausted. Each time we attacked, the goblins had to dodge the orcs' attacks that could fatally injure any one of them with a single stroke. Of course, we could also whittle away the orcs' forces slowly, but at this rate, the village will fall before we accomplish anything of note. And while Go, Gig, and the other goblin rares still have some strength, the normal goblins are clearly about to reach their limits. But, even then, I have to make them march. Otherwise, the village will fall. Onwards! I commanded. They don't even have the strength to speak. Even that silent nod of theirs only bore hope at most. Sheet. What king? I call myself king, and yet the most I can do is rely on their strength. With my body lowered, I approached the orc horde from the thickets. Pyujiue. At the orc's cry, I looked up momentarily. There, I saw the orcs quickly gather into one group as they began to head toward our direction. How did they notice us? Retreat. I immediately commanded. We have to retreat. Otherwise the goblins will all be eaten. Then in order to weaken the oncoming orcs, I stood before them, and swung my great sword. As we began to retreat, it suddenly hit me. The direction of the wind has changed. The orc's sense of smell is strong. Did they notice us because of that? Orc clubs came swinging at me from my left and right. One of the annoying things about fighting in war is that the attacks come from so many directions, causing the kind of opponents that would normally not be a threat in a one-on-one become dangerous. Not to mention that there are actually more orcs than us. On top of that, they're strong enough to kill the goblins in one hit. Knowing that, I immediately ordered the goblins that had painstakingly tried to ambush the orcs to retreat, while I dealt with the orcs threatening them myself. I swung my great sword, and pushed aside the oncoming clubs. Then I forcefully changed the direction of the swung sword, and swung it back where it came from, slashing the chest of the orc that had neared me in order to chase the goblins. Normally, this orc would have already faltered from this attack, but now it was as if it was not even fazed. In fact, the orc even grew angrier, and attacked me even wilder than before. An orc then tried to catch me from my right. I dodged him, and at the same time, the club that had been swung from my left passed by my eyes. This bastards, they're not considering the damages they could incur at all. If just now, I had instead cut the arm of the orc that tried to capture me, that club would have landed itself firmly on my body. They just tried to kill me even at the cost of that orc's arm. On top of that, they did it so smoothly. So this is the orc's madness. The power of the orc king. Fixing my aim at the oncoming attack from the orc to my left, I swung my great sword. With the assistance from that swing went straight for the orc's head. The orc tried to defend with his club, but my sword was faster, and his head splattered into blood and gore. I wielded my great sword over my shoulder as I fixed my posture. As I did, an orc entered deep into my range, challenging a melee. In response, I let my sword descend with great power. At the sword's descent, the orc's skull split, but before I could cut the orc all the way through, I stopped. It's because another orc was attacking me from behind. The orc extended his spear, and it whizzed right past my shoulders. I was vexed at having to deal with the fear of being attacked from behind, but I only gritted my teeth as I focused on the fight at hand. Suddenly, a short sword was thrown, drawing a parabola before piercing my feet. Damn it, damn it, damn it. As I quickly retreated, I hid my body within the thickets, and crawled about. Like that I desperately ran from the orcs. I then followed the goblins' trail of smell. It was dark by the time I reached them. Chief, Gig drooped his head powerlessly. Seeing that along with Gigo who was silently staring at me, made me seethe in anger. Why? Why am I so weak? Why is there such a huge gap in strength? Am I going to lose? Am I going to be defeated? At this rate, the village will be annihilated. A place like this. In a place like this. As I gripped iron second, I remembered the sword's weight. There's no time. In that case. Gig, as I quietly closed my eyes, I sighed deeply. I need to win while minimizing the casualties. Yes, it was because I thought of such things that we were pushed by the orcs. It was because of that I had to run away with my tail in between my legs. As I thought that to myself, I began to speak. And I asked. Are you prepared to follow me? I don't know if the goblins felt something amiss, but they glanced at each other. At this rate, the village will be annihilated, I continued. The goblins remained quiet as they listened to my words. This is no longer a fight that can be fought without sacrifices, I declared. I am the king. Therefore, I must order them to put their lives down to protect that which must be protected. If the king commands it, then, Gig looked at me straight in the eyes. Yes. That is exactly it. I am ordering you all to die. To all of you, who shared a meal with me, who hunted with me. To all of you who lived with me. I am ordering you all to die. My life already belongs to the king, Gigo said as he bowed his head. I don't know how to describe this feeling. But unless I give this order, the village will fall. My dreams will be crushed. And all the blood that have been spilled will all go to waste. But, yes. In the end. I am ordering you all to die for me. From here on, we will be attacking the orcs. This time, you are to stop them in their tracks. And you shall not stop until the orc king is dead. As you will. As you command. As I stood, Gigo and Gig commanded the goblins. I haven't the time to waver. The moment I hesitate, the village will fall into ruins. Onwards. With the iron second on my shoulder, I made way for the orc king. Orc total number. 85 heavy armored, sword, shield, armor. 16 clubs. 43 long spears. 19 short spear. 8. Volume 1, Chapter 41. Clash 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 62, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, High Kobold, LV1, Gastra, LV1, Cynthia, LV1, Abnormal Status, gripping the iron second that was over my shoulder, I ran as I cut through the thickets, exposing myself to the enemy. Following from behind me was Gigo with his curved sword, the stealthy Gig, and the 5 groups of 15 normal goblins. The orcs that had spread out before the village were already aware of us. They faced our direction, and they arranged themselves into a wall. A literal wall of flesh. If it was a while ago, we would have run upon being spotted, but, this time is different. GURU-AAA. With a yell, the skill bellowed, giving the signal to the noble class, Gigu, and the long-armed, Giga, on the other side. I saw the orc before me swing his club the same time as I held my great sword in a side stance. You're slow. My life is like a cloud of dust, Excel. There was no hesitation. A wall of air pushed me from behind with crushing pressure, propelling me toward the attacking orc as I thrusted out my sword. In the blink of an eye, my body crashed into the orc as my blade pierced into its flesh. Guaryo. In the same instant, the skill activated. In exchange for the madness brought on by the crazed warrior's soul, physical strength 30% up, agility 30% up, magic power 30% up. The orc's club hit me from the side, but thanks to the damage reduction of 20%, it wasn't fatal. Then with my great sword still pierced into the orc's body, I clad that same great sword in magic power, and then swung it up to cut through the orc's head. Turn me into a blade, enchant. My blade moved through the orc's body, cutting it as if it were a mere sheet of paper. And when the sword clad in black flames exited through the orc's head, it descended once more onto a nearby orc. Pyugua, the orc tried to use its club as a shield, but to its dismay, both the club and its chest were cut through by the great sword. And as the sword moved back the course it had gone, it cut through the orc that was just right behind that orc. Move. We have to go even deeper. That was the only thought in my mind as I continued on my way. Guruoa. Everything that stands before me is an enemy. Move, cut, kill, cut, ccccccc cut. Ooaga. Two orcs stood in my way as they swung down their long spears. As their spears descended, I struck with my sword, sending their spears flying away. The moment the orcs lost their weapons, they brought their fists up, and they rushed toward me. Meeting them, I rushed toward them as well, and I swung my great sword up from below. The tip of my sword met with the nape of one of the orc's neck, cutting it and decapitating it. The skill had fully demonstrated its abilities, bringing forth a sword that knew no hesitation even in the fury of one's emotions. I forcefully swung down the sword that had been raised up high, drawing a line like a meteor toward the other oncoming orc. My blade met with the orc's thighs, piercing all the way to the core of the orc. As I removed the great sword from the orc, I fixed my posture. Then with a flash of my blade, I decapitated the orc that had lost its balance and was falling down with its back turned toward me. There are enemies. 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 I swung my sword at the behest of the maddened. Everything around me is an enemy. Concern is needless. So bring forth your power, bring forth your magic, bring it all out and cut them all down. Guruoa. Magic power once again gathered behind me. My life is like a cloud of dust, excel. I opened a path by crashing my body into the orcs that tried to block my way. Then as I finished off an orc that toppled over, I swung my blade toward two other orcs that were approaching me from both of my flanks. I managed to cut off one of the orc's arms, but he didn't stop, only continuing to charge toward me even more. So in response, I grabbed his head, and using all of my body's strength, I flung the orc away. Then suddenly, I saw it from a distance. A body that was considerably big even amongst the huge builds of the orcs. It was the Orc King. Founnduu. Move. Using only the surrounding orcs' presence, I grasped their positions, and swung my sword according to instinct. Left, right, in front, back. Back. When I turned around, what entered my eyes were the goblins desperately defending against the orcs, surrounded. I had gone out too deep, and the goblins couldn't follow. Not good. The moment I thought that, a club came sweeping at me from in front, sending me flying away. Was released, and the power that had brimmed in me withered. I fixed my grip on my great sword with my right hand. Then with the other hand, I grabbed a short sword that had been prepared beforehand from my armor, and I threw it toward the orcs that were surrounding the goblins to contain the situation. Followed up the king. At Gigo's command, the goblins began to pursue my back even at the cost of sacrifices. The moment we stop, we die. We cannot stop until we reach the Orc King. If you want to live, then run like you want to die. Move. Turn me into a blade, enchant. I clad my blade in magic power, and I swung it against the orc standing in my way. The blade cut through the orc's large body, causing blood to spurt out. The rain of blood fell on dyeing my body in its hue. I continued on my way. 10 more steps until the Orc King. 3 orcs wielding a shield and sword appeared before me. Leave this to us. But then a voice came from behind me, and Go and Gig faced the 3 orcs. With only 10 of them now, it was questionable whether they'd be able to even handle 3 orcs, but even then. I left the orcs to them. Because of the skill, and the consecutive uses of, widening this already desperate gap even wider. I have no name. But with this my own will also be sealed. As I tried to near the Orc King with my great sword over my shoulder, the foe before me lifted the great sword that he had used to destroy the ground. The resulting force of the wind as he lifted his sword stopped my charge. If I receive a hit from him, I will surely die. I probably won't also be able to use. The same goes for since we are currently being surrounded by the orcs. I need to have the advantage in number to use that skill, so it's impossible. I don't have a way of identifying my opponent's weakness. With so many of my options blocked, the only ones left are my cancelled out with his as well. This isn't looking good. What should I do? In that case, a heavy voice echoed out from Gol's mouth. I thought he would take a step forward, but then his giant figure suddenly approached me at a frightening speed that I don't have time to think. Twisting my body, I forced myself off the Orc King's trajectory. The sound of an explosion literally blew up from beside me. I tried to increase the distance between me and Gol, but he rushed toward me again. He headed toward me with his sword pierced into the ground. In response, I desperately fought his sword with my own, but meeting his blade was the most that I could do. Like that I was blown off into a large tree. I didn't even have time to use a falling technique to soften the blow, so my body received the brunt of the force as my back firmly planted itself onto the tree. With me gasping for breath, and my body unmoving, it was clear that death was just around the corner. Despite that I calmly glared at Gol's giant body. Ho, you can still fight. That voice no longer contained the scorn it had contained at the start. All it had now was admiration. Well, it's all or nothing, should I try it out? Exchanging blows with him with. No, that sort of power isn't can do something about. That power is like an ice crusher, destroying anything that gets into its range. A one-hit instant killing attack, in other words. Seriously, it's so strong, I'm feeling envious. But. Again, Gol brandished his sword as he rushed toward me. Turn me into a blade, enchant. I still haven't run out of cards. I followed the course of his great sword with my eyes. And as it descended, I met his blade with my own blade that was clad in flames. My aim was his weapon's destruction. My arms creaked as I received the pressure of his great sword. Ho, I can't stand that grin of his. I managed to succeed to some extent, but unfortunately I couldn't break his sword all the way. It must be his skill that he managed to force this kind of result. Still, I at least managed to crack his sword. I thought that to myself as I gleefully stared at the crack on his great sword. Then, suddenly, I saw red ether seep out of the orc's body. I am strong, I am peerless, bless. Just like mine, he clad his blade in magic power. His sword flickered within the burning flames of red ether. With this, it won't break. Gol smiled as he glared at me. He grasped his great sword in his 2 hands as he faced me. Calm down, the situation won't change. I'll still die in 1 hit if I get hit by that sword. That's all. That's all. Gurua. Defeat is unacceptable. Such a thing is an insult to those who have died for me. Moreover, to those who are still desperately fighting now. I will win. A pleasant pressure. The one who will come out the victor is me. I'll kill this bastard while he's still taking me lightly. Go and die along with that hubris of yours. I moved at my fastest. I slashed with my brandished sword, but Gol easily stopped it. I wanted to click my tongue, but bearing it, I attacked again. Sparks erupted between the black and red flames. Shockwaves visible even to the onlookers exploded. But despite the fearsomeness of that scene, I willingly thrust my body into it. As I stepped in, I struck my sword up against the Orc King. But I knew that he could also stop this. That giant body of the Orc King's remained unmoving. It didn't move even the slightest bit. The Orc King only leisurely responded to my attacks. And each time I desperately met his blade with mine, my feet would dig into the ground, fucking brute. We exchanged blows within a space of 3 meters square. The battle hasn't ended yet, but I'm gradually being pushed back. That's a given. My attack is a far cry from my opponent's strength. Gol's attack is so strong it can even paralyze my hands with every hit. My body had already been blown away 10 times in this fight so far. Then Gol's blade swung again. That was my limit. His blade descended from above, carrying gravity with it. I dodged. You backed off. Exclaimed Gol happily. In a twinkle, Gol's giant body suddenly appeared before me. I didn't even have time to dodge as I received the brunt of his blow. I was sent flying to my back like I was just hit by a truck. I was probably sent flying 5 meters away as I mowed through every thin tree in my path. Finally, I stopped when my back hit against a strong tree. Somehow though, I hadn't let go of my sword once despite that. It was strange even to me. Guha. I spit out red blood and I coughed. You did well. Little king with no name. Ho, you can still stand up. Using my great sword as a cane, I stood up. And the black flames flickered. Of course. I poured power into my shaking arms.